What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Another Friday, another episode of Why Are We Bullish? Got a killer panel today. We've got a couple of guys that were supposed to be on a couple weeks back. Unfortunately, my eye was swollen shut, so they've been so gracious as to join me again with a better aesthetic. And I've got a gentleman who actually has interviewed me previously. And so obviously time to return the favor. I got to get him on here. So we'll do some intros shortly. Of course, this is live. Anything can happen. So I defer to my friend Bill here.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
If you have not already, please do like, subscribe, share, all those things. Super important. They help get this show in front of more eyeballs. I am Ben with the BTC Sessions. This is your daily session.
HODL the Bitcoin.
All right, before we dive in and bring in our guests, let's take a look at where we are in the market right now. This is timechain-calendar.com. Right now, we're sitting at $27,373 per coin. A single US dollar will pick you up 3,653 sats. 92.03% of all Bitcoin have been mined. That's 19.33 million of them. And in terms of fees, next block, 31 sats per byte. If you're willing to wait a little bit, still 21 sats per byte. We're seeing the onslaught of JPEGs take over the mempool. So beware, act accordingly, use RBF, all those things, use Lightning. On top of that, the mempool, I've got to comment on again. Holy crap. So average person's node mempool 300 megabytes. The backlog in the mempool right now 1 gigabyte. That is unprecedented. Never seen that. So basically, what that means is most working nodes are purging anything beyond 300 megabytes, which means right now anything below just shy of 5 sats per byte. If you do a transaction for that, it will purge that transaction from the mempool probably. So set your fees accordingly and then use RBF if you need to bump it. Just be aware that's 69,000 transactions unconfirmed waiting in the mempool. So again, be aware. That's that. Okay, up next, shout out to sponsor the show, HodlHodl. If you're looking to get some Bitcoin and you've got a few priorities in mind, peer-to-peer, instant self-custody, non-KYC, then HodlHodl might be the place for you. You can sign up in minutes with nothing more than an email address and be trading instantly and be able to get your hands on some non-KYC sats. Check them out. They also have a lending platform in which nothing is ever rehypothecated. Up next, we've got CoinKite. Of course, once you get those non-KYC sats, you're going to want to store it on something that is what I would say, in my opinion, is the best damn hardware on the network, on the planet, to be honest. I love my Cold Card Mark IV. It's badass. So many awesome features on it. And yeah, I've done a full tutorial on it. Check it out. But they've got lots of great stuff over at CoinKite. The tap signer, the sats card, the block clock. And coming down the pipe at the end of the year, the Cold Card Q1 looks absolutely badass, so keep an eye out for that. You can go to coinkite.com and use code BTC Sessions for 5% off everything in the store. Now, if you want to go beyond just the single sig option, you can go into multi-sig, and a great collaborative custody multi-sig option is Nunchuk with their Honey Badger program. It works with things like the Cold Card and the tap signer and a ton of other hardware options. It is very easy onboarding. They walk you through every single step, super simple. And then it has baked in inheritance planning, so you can know you have the peace of mind that your next of kin are going to get the sats that they deserve. And the best part about it, non-KYC, you don't need any additional information, no personal information in order to use it. And that kind of sets it apart from other options on the market. So check them out, nunchuk.io. And finally, don't trust, verify. Start9, your sovereign computing solution. So you can run your own Bitcoin node, your stack there, Bitcoin Core, Lightning, mempool.space, join market. You can also self-host your data. I did a video earlier this week on self-hosting your own password manager, but you can do things like files and photos. You can also host a Nostr relay and Nostr clients. You can do all kinds of stuff. So check them out, start9.com. You can get the MC1. That's kind of the lower end. And then if you're looking for something really beefy, you can get the Start9 Embassy Pro to host all your life. Anyways, enough of my ranting. We need to get our guests in here. Let's get them all in. We're going to welcome Julian, George, and Cedric. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being on the show. I think some intros are in order. Also, it's funny. Before I even get started, normally, so we're trying something new here, and I think it shows weird. It's giving me weird stats now on the live viewers in that it's not showing me any of the stats. Meanwhile, I see like a bunch of people in the chat that are going at it. So I have no concept of how many people are watching, which I normally do, but nonetheless, I see you guys in the chat. So keep them coming. We're going to bring up comments and everything. But let's do a round of intros for anybody unfamiliar. We're just going to ask the question, who are you and what do you do? And I'll toss it to Julian first. Give yourself an intro, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I am Julian Shibley. I am the host of the Weekly HodlHodl, which is just a Bitcoin-only podcast YouTube station where I cover weekly Bitcoin adoption topics to keep me engaged on my investment and to hopefully get my family and friends kind of on board and orange-pilled.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad to have you. We had a really good chat. How long ago was that we had our chat?
That was maybe 5-6 months ago, I think.
Wow, it's been that long. Holy crap.
Yeah,
well, I'm glad to have you here, man. I appreciate your time and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. Cedric, welcome to the show. Do you want to give yourself an intro? Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Cedric Youngelman. I host the Bitcoin Matrix podcast by night, and during the day, I'm a corporate accounting consultant. And that's kind of what I do. I really love Bitcoin and helping evangelize about it and educate.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you, man. I've seen you doing your thing. I've kind of listened to a bunch of your stuff, and so I feel like maybe this is a long time coming. I felt like I should have reached out sooner, but I'm glad you're here now. So
long time listener, first time caller. I'm super excited.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you, man. And George, I don't want to leave you hanging. You're up next. Give yourself a little intro.
Thank you. What's up, Ben? Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is George. I'm the head of community at Bitcoin Magazine. I lead our efforts to support the local grassroots Bitcoin meetup scene. I'm also co-author of a book called Thank God for Bitcoin. And I co-organize my meetup here in the Arizona area. So glad to be here, excited to chat, and there's a lot to be bullish about.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'm happy to have you all. This should be a good one. We're just going to dive right into it. So anybody watching that's unfamiliar, this is Why Are We Bullish? Concept of the show is really simple. All of us are coming with a reason why we're bullish. And this can really be anything. It can be a personal experience, a news item, an application, a piece of content, whatever it may be. We're bringing a reason for being bullish. So we basically go by the 3 R's. Somebody's going to drop a reason for being bullish. Second, we're all going together to riff on that reason. And then third, we're going to rotate to the next person until we all get a turn. So simple: reason, riff, rotate. So I'm going to get us started today. And I've got, I had to double check before the show that part of my reason didn't overlap because, you know, the Homer Simpson meme where he's in the bar and everybody's all the same. Yeah, there's a bit of that injected into my reason today, but we'll get into that momentarily. It's just an example within my reason. So my reason for being bullish is I don't know about you guys, but I feel like we're pretty firmly in the then they fight you phase. I don't know how far into that we are. I feel like we've got plenty more to deal with going forward, but like we've definitely crossed that chasm of ignore you, then laugh at you, and then fight you, and then win. I don't know how close we are to winning, but we're definitely into the then they fight you stage. And so I wanted to pull up a couple things that I found interesting in and around that. So just some examples of the then they fight you. So this is a recent article, kind of a follow-up to Nick Carter's Choke Point 2.0, but it summarizes a few of the things that have happened recently in and around, you know, the crackdowns in the industry. So just in the last little bit, we've seen the SEC announcing a lawsuit against all these different companies, in particular Paxos recently for issuing their stablecoin. Kraken settled with the SEC for offering a staking product. The SEC chair, Gensler, openly labeled every other asset other than Bitcoin a security, which, I mean, through that lens, I felt that was obviously going to happen, but you know, it's all part of the general theme. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works held a hearing lambasting Bitcoin for its environmental footprint. The Biden admin proposed a bill that singles out miners for onerous tax treatment, so like a 30% tax. The New York Attorney General declared Ethereum the second largest crypto asset a security, which again, I feel like a lot of Bitcoiners saw that one coming, but you know, with all part of the same thing. They're treating everything blanket the same, even though many of us understand that Bitcoin and everything else are different. Moving on, SEC continued its anti-consumer protection efforts by doubling down on their attempts to block a spot Bitcoin ETF in court, as well as trying to stop Binance from buying the asset of the bankrupt Voyager. The OCC let crypto bank Protego's application for National Trust Charter expire without approval, and the SEC sent Coinbase a Wells notice indicating its intent to bring enforcement against action for them for a variety of their business lines. There's been a lot that's been going down. We also saw all the stuff with Caitlin Long and Avanti, which is now Custodia Bank, and the Fed basically saying just prior to all these banking blowups saying, no, this isn't going to fly. We can't have a full custodial, like 100% reserve bank in the mix with all of our all of our existing levers to the tits, fractional reserve insanity that we've got going on. So, that got rejected. So all of these things have been happening. Now, in the face of that, when we look at year-to-date Bitcoin, like it's doing quite well in what is the most coordinated attack to date that I've seen. There's been so many things that have come down the pipe, and Bitcoiners are, we're talking about it, but Bitcoin is still holding up throughout it, despite the FUD. And I tend not to make my reasons about price, so this is kind of a minor part of it. But what happens when Bitcoin actually gets outlawed? What happens when Bitcoin actually, when they fully bring down the hammer? I'm not saying that this is necessarily going to happen, but like a good example is in Nigeria. They basically outlawed it, said, no dice, this is not allowed. Take your CBD and you'll be happy. And, what did we see in Nigeria? Not a drop in Bitcoin price, but demand for it. And because of lack of access, it commanded a premium. There's other things. There are other perspectives to that too, right? Like because the spot price of the Naira, the official Naira rate versus USD versus the actual free market rate was also there. So that contributed to that premium as well. But that's in a world where governments blanket say you're not allowed to have this, it doesn't make the price necessarily go down. Now we've also seen, and this is my favorite part, and I'm sure everybody in the comments and that's watching knows that this was inevitably going to be mentioned, but we've seen major efforts on the part of Greenpeace, aka Ripple, because they're bankrolling this whole thing with the change the code effort. And so what this is, for anybody unfamiliar, basically Ripple, the centralized shitcoin, took $5 million and threw it at Greenpeace and said, We need a campaign against Bitcoin's proof of work so that they will change, and so that will, not saying this in the open, but obviously the goal here is to say, well, we are much better than Bitcoin because we are much better for the environment. I think that's kind of the main driving factor to this. So anyways, part of this change the code effort, they commissioned an artist to build a piece of art that would show how awful Bitcoin is. And so he built an 11-foot skull covered in e-waste to expose Bitcoin's impact on climate change. Now, the unintended consequence is that the artwork was fucking awesome. And the entire Bitcoin community loved it and has embraced it. I think my entire feed is filled with Bitcoin skulls with glowing laser eyes. Everybody, it's the Homer Simpson meme where he's in the bar and everybody has the same face. It's all the glowing Bitcoin skull. Not only have Bitcoiners embraced this as a symbol, the best part about it is the top of the head is the stacks from a nuclear reactor, the cooling stacks, which many Bitcoiners recognize nuclear as a solution for our energy crisis, as a non-emitting source of energy that is incredibly efficient. And so people look at this and they say, wow, that's incredible. What a perfect vision for hope in the future. And so we fully embraced it. So many people have said this is incredible. And not only that, people have begun reaching out to the artist. So the best part, Gigi kind of encapsulated it here on Twitter the best. He just said meme wars, and he showed the artwork, and then he showed like the little captions of the kid in front saying, "I need to get more skulls. Bitches love skulls." And then Christine Lagarde, "I feel bad for you," and the skull, "I don't think about you at all." And then my favorite one from Lena with the little her little I don't even know what to call them. What would you guys call these little people? Like the little Bitcoin stuffies or whatever.
The little hodler is like the main thing, right?
Yeah, the little hodler. Yeah. So if you guys don't know the little hodler, you can get the little plushie at all the conferences and everything. They're great. My kids have a couple of them. Anyways, the little comic strip of the corporate person saying that they're going to commission epic anti-Bitcoin art, and then all the Bitcoiners gather around saying how epic it is, and they're kind of dismayed that everybody likes it. Anyways, Bitcoiners are really good at taking the memes that are meant to deprecate and basically poo-poo all our ideas and embrace them and wear them as a badge of honor. And so that's what we see happening here. And my favorite part about this is that people have reached out to the artist, and the artist has gone, wow. All the environmentalist Bitcoiners are reaching out and saying, hey, actually, this can, you may have been uninformed by the people that are bankrolling this, but we'd love to chat with you and talk about this. Now, I think there may be some, down the line, I've seen maybe some developments in and around Miami, but nonetheless, the artist seems very, very receptive to this as well, and is talking to, in my opinion, all the right people. And we may have just added somebody to Team Bitcoin through through something that was meant to cast a shadow on us, which is hilarious. So my kind of overarching theme here is that Bitcoin is taking all of this FUD and all of this fight you stage in stride quite well. And I would also venture to say that as this then they fight you stage ramps up, which I think it will continue to do. I don't think this is the worst that we're going to have thrown at us. I would argue that we now have the tools to weather it. Had it been, a number of years back, it could have been pretty dire if things got into full swing. but we've got a lot of great tools now. We've seen with the whole Operation Choke Point thing, a lot of the on-ramps and everything are being at least squeezed a little bit. It's getting a little bit difficult, a little bit more difficult, but I've got a full playlist on like, how do you get peer-to-peer Bitcoin? How do you get non-KYC Bitcoin? You can do that, right? You still have your regular on-ramps, but it's a skill I think people should at least be familiar with, right? We also have privacy tools now. We have things like, CoinJoin. We have things like Lightning Network. We have things like Xiaomi eCash on Bitcoin, which is a relatively new thing. So things I'm talking like Cashew as well as Fedimints. We've got a lot of tools at our disposal on top of non-KYC methods to obtain Bitcoin, on top of all of these incredible tools, on top of the kind of the peer-to-peer local, circular economy that many people are working on. There's all these tools coming down the pipe. And so if I could sum it all up in a single sentence, is in Bitcoin's history, we've never been more prepared for then they fight you. Not saying it's going to be a walk in the park, but I'm saying that a lot has been built in the past 13 years. And, if you were confident in the years before, then you should be hella confident now, and you should continue to work for it to make it even better for Bitcoiners. So I'm going to open it up to you guys. And I'm just going to kind of lob that one to you for questions, comments, whatever you feel like tagging in. Whoever wants to jump in, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that comes to mind as you're talking is the whole, like, we are not ready, or are we ready for hyper Bitcoinization being kind of one of the debates right now. And I think you kind of alluded to it, but sort of in the backdrop of both the banking crisis and everything that's happening, people are asking this question of like, well, and I think the Balaji bet is kind of part of it of, if Bitcoin goes to $1 million in 90 days, well, that's going to mean that the world is falling apart and we're not ready for that. We don't have enough on-ramps or whatever. And I look at all that and I'm like, if we're not ready, then, what are we waiting for? I kind of think that's internal sort of FUD, friendly fire a little bit. I think we're as ready as we're going to be in a lot of ways. Sure, we'll be more ready tomorrow. We'll be more ready in 5 years. We'll be more ready in 10 years. But it's like, we have to be ready now, because you ultimately can't, you don't get to decide when it's going to happen, right? This whole gradually then suddenly thing. And moments like this, like with Greenpeace sort of coming at us, is hilarious, because we're more ready, like you said, than we were 5 years ago. We have more of a meme army, and whatever the attack looks like, we are preparing for it. And so I kind of push back on this idea that we're not ready for hyper Bitcoinization, because I think that Bitcoiners it's like the only thing we're ready for. It's like, bring it on, So so that's kind of how I look at this whole situation.
The way you describe it reminds me of it's like having kids. Yes, exactly. You're never really ready for it until it comes, and then you figure it out.
Right.
And I feel like that's how Bitcoin's going to handle this. Shit hits the fan, you roll with it, you figure it out.
Right. Perfect analogy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree but I would say the greater we are not ready. I think Bitcoin is ready. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's most important. The life raft is there, whether everyone knows about it. But all the communications networks are in place for the word to get out quicker if things came at us faster. But I think the greatest thing is Bitcoin is ready for us to all jump in. Whether enough on-ramps are there, whether people understand KYC or non-KYC. To what George said, we could all learn that down the road. But Bitcoin, I think, is ready. And I think this can happen a lot sooner than people realize.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, Bitcoin is it's a lot more ready than we were to move into the existing system that we're in now, right? After the world wars, right? I mean, we've got a well thought out engineered system that's available for everybody to kind of dive in. It's just whether or not people have the knowledge and the tools around them to begin to really understand how this system works and how it will work moving into the future. But going, all this FUD it's amazing to see how coordinated all of it is, right? Like the White House report came out too, about Bitcoin. The banks, we're hearing like lists of banks that are sending messages to their customers that say, hey, we're not going to let you wire Bitcoin to your exchange because we think it might be a risk to your money. So they're like preventing you from doing what you want with your money, which is kind of wild. And then did you guys see that the NASDAQ was talking about today releasing Bitcoin custody, Bitcoin and Ether custody services in like a month or something?
Yeah, in Q2, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just going like, how coordinated could this be that they're really just like trying to get, to run all this business through the banksters,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's maybe what that's the attack vector, right? Like it's going to be, and they've done this a lot, but it's going to be a lot of contradictory messaging, right? It's going to be, right now we're hearing the banking system is secure, it's stable, it's so on and so forth, as they're effectively saying like, oh, okay, we got to we will take whatever emergency measures to backstop everything of this entirely stable system. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that, where it's like you're going to see these contradictory messages in that these collapses will be blamed on us probably, but then they'll say that the solution is for all of the stuff that we deal with to be custodied by the banks that were failing. And that's where they got gold, right? That's where this is where Bitcoin improves upon gold, because it was near a necessity to basically store gold and then transact with a gold-backed currency through this what's the word I'm looking for? Abstraction of it through paper currency, right? Like that was the mechanism through which they were able to say, you got your paper currency, it represents gold. Oh wait, now it doesn't represent gold. And so, the playbook is, you've got your paper currency that represents Bitcoin, or you've got your digital currency that represents Bitcoin. Oh wait, it doesn't represent Bitcoin anymore. Luckily, the whole premise of Bitcoin was built upon, don't trust that. You need to remove that layer of trust. You can't be doing that, or at least we need to localize it. Again, in the context of Fediments, you need to more localize it to small communities instead of like the entire currency is backed in a way that can be revoked. And then at least you learn your lessons if you put trust in people that you shouldn't. And so, yeah, I think that's coming down the pipe. I think that's maybe the playbook here. I don't know about a blanket ban. I don't know. What do you guys think about a blanket ban? Do you think that would be tried like in the West?
I could see them not allowing you to buy Bitcoin, or more to the point, not allowing you to sell your cash for things you want to buy. So a form of capital controls. I think that's what's really happening right now with the banks kind of squeezing the purchase of Bitcoin, and I hate to say crypto, but they're just trying to keep the cash at the bank.
Yeah.
That's part of it. And I think, one of the reasons they're not going full frontal on Bitcoin is they are fighting so many fires right now and other fronts. And as one of the reasons they can fight Bitcoin later is Bitcoin's only $500 billion. They got problems bigger than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They have banks bigger than Bitcoin, balance sheets way bigger than Bitcoin that are backed by, whether you want to say the money's not there or the assets don't match the duration of the liabilities. The thing is, if they had to sell right now, there would be probably trillions in unrealized losses at just American banks.
Yeah.
So they can't just go right at Bitcoin. It's not their biggest problem right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that it would, that they would try like an all-out ban on Bitcoin until, I don't think that would happen until maybe a later point. But at that point, it would be too far gone. I mean, we look at countries like Turkey, right, that are going through like almost hyperinflation over there. and their first instinct is to stop the money, stop people from leaving their currency and going into another currency. So at some point it does become a risk, but it takes the country recognizing, and I feel like there's a certain arrogance in the Western, the Western countries, that they don't believe that this can necessarily happen to them.
Yeah.
And so by the time that it does, I just think that, people will have their money where they need to have it, and they'll be sufficiently hedged. And this really, there's so many of these companies trading on the New York Stock Exchange, so like,
Yeah.
I like, how do you do that without creating huge outrage across the country,
Yeah. Sail Dog in the comments says they're fighting everything except self-custody. I would say that's currently, I mean, in the current news cycle, that's true. There's been some FUD around self-custody, mostly out of the EU. There's been some shit there where the whole self-hosted wallets thing, which is just such a stupid term. But again, in a context, I think you're right. Things have to get a hell of a lot worse for them to go down that road, and everything else would have been burned by then. I feel like Bitcoin will be much larger and a much more obvious threat at that point. And at that point, it's too late anyways. Like when Bitcoin is an obvious threat, then to everybody that's being hurt by the existing system, Bitcoin doesn't look like an obvious threat. It looks like an obvious off-ramp. It looks like an obvious escape valve, to quote Christina Lagarde, right? So at that point when they're banning Bitcoin, that's when you get that Nigeria situation where there's a premium on Bitcoin, except for if there's no on-ramps, then that's just the price of Bitcoin, right?
Totally. I think the interesting thing too is like, it's almost like, are we asking the right questions? Because they can ban Bitcoin in theory, right? But they can't like ban self-custody, to the comments point. So they can't fully ban it. And so it's almost like, what are we worried about? I think sometimes we spend too much time concerned or sort of have this like anxiety about like these hypothetical scenarios, where as Bitcoiners, we need to recognize that we have all the leverage and we have the upper hand and we have time. I love what Cedric said about that they have bigger problems than Bitcoin, because if you play out the game theory, it's like, even though it feels like we're under attack, and we are, they're coming for us and they get it, they do have much bigger problems to deal with. And so we still have, I think, a little bit of room to really capitalize on this opportunity to onboard people, to educate people, to get people on this life raft, and to really propel a hyper Bitcoinization forward in a way that we might not have after it's kind of too late. And so I think asking the right questions about what their actual attack vectors are and where they can come after us is an important part of the whole conversation, because too often we focus on these hypothetical scenarios that may never even come to fruition.
Yeah. It's again, there's an element of dealing with what's right in front of you and building and striving for the future. And then there's the element of, I mean, I love my tinfoil hat Bitcoiners. I think they add, those are the Bitcoiners that they'll look at the most secure setup in the world and they'll say, well, technically, here's an attack vector. I think that's valuable. But also, like you're right. Like we have to attack this in different ways. So like everybody's got their role. And I love the Bitcoiners that are like, all right, you need a bunker, and you need you start from there. So yeah, I love all of it. I got to give a shout out to a couple things in the chat here before we kind of do a rotation here. But I just saw this one comment and I had forgotten about this, so I thought it was worth pulling up here. At one time they thought if your wallet was unplugged, you were screwed. Referring to I don't know if you guys recall this, Frances Coppola. She thought she was so confident in how useless Bitcoin was. She thought that you had to have your hardware wallet plugged into your computer and online in order to receive Bitcoin and properly secure it. And the second you unplugged it, you could receive no money, which was just such a great moment in Bitcoin history. The other thing I wanted to let you guys know about was we've got somebody in the chat here. He's a longtime fan of the show. He shows up quite often, dare I say every week in some instances. And sometimes he's here many hours in advance to comment. He hates Bitcoin, but he is here every week to tell us how wrong we are. May I introduce you to David Wong, BTC Sessions #1 fan. He would like you to know that US dollar is real man's money and Bitcoin is poor man's money. So David, thank you for being here. I love you. Never change and continue to be back every single week. We appreciate your input.
Can we call him Fiat Schiff?
He was big on Ripple for a little bit. I don't know if that's still a thing. So it's more or less the same thing.
Wait, is this your assigned like FBI agent? What's going on? He's literally here every week.
We're never quite sure who he is. He disappeared for a while and then came back, and I'm not sure if it's the same guy or if somebody like stepped in. It's like the new Captain America stepping into the mantle. I don't know.
What's up, David? Good to see you,
but
man.
it doesn't matter. I hope he's here forever. Anyways,
He's completely Wong.
Yeah, he is definitely wrong about a few things. But nonetheless, we're glad to have him here. We'll orange pill him over time. It's taken quite a few hours. We haven't made a lot of progress. It'll happen one day, I'm confident. Nonetheless, guys, it's time for a rotation. We're going to rotate it up here. We're going to switch gears, and we're going to toss it to one of you to ask why you're bullish. And I'm going to toss it to Julian first here. And I'm just going to cue you up with a simple question. Why are you bullish?
Awesome. So my life is all about family and relationships in general. I'm a salesperson, and I consider myself successful just because of the relationships that I have. And for me, I'm excited about the bull run, and specifically the new cohort of Bitcoiners that will be born during this bull run. And a part of that reason being just like the sheer amount of Bitcoin resources that these new Bitcoiners will have at their fingertips. Awesome freaking tutorials by Ben Sessions here to get onboarded. The amount of books, the amount of hardware that's been created, apps, articles, the podcasts, the local meetups. Shout out to Chicago Bit Devs and the Milwaukee Bitcoin meetup, which I attend occasionally. And these people just, they have those amazing resources to basically answer all their questions about Bitcoin from every different angle, to learn about sound money, the effects of inflation on healthcare, food, supplies, everything like that. Mining and green energy, how Bitcoin allows for green energy creation to be profitable, the freedoms from authoritative regimes, reduction of government wastefulness, concentration of value and value for value, and a concentration on just general production of members of society, and then of course banking the unbanked. All these people have all this stuff at their fingertips now. And especially, they have this banking crisis that they're seeing firsthand. So like, especially in the West where everybody feels cozy, right? They have another reason to kind of get in. But most importantly, I think, is the renewed energy that comes with these and patience that comes with a new Bitcoiner into the space to explain it to their peers and the people around them. To me, that's the biggest thing, because it gets tiresome. And I've not been in Bitcoin nearly as long as probably you guys and some other people, but it gets difficult to have calm, collected conversations with people that just tell you it's going to get banned, they'll never let it happen. you know, it's wasteful with energy, like all the FUD that goes around. It's hard to have those conversations year after year after year. And I think we see some of those longtime Bitcoiners that have been out in front of the public that are just over it and they can't do it anymore, right? And so every year we get, every bull run, we get a new cohort of like excited individuals that are just ready to freaking talk to everybody. And I think that it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And that's the reason that I'm bullish, because I think that those people and those relationships are going to, you know, make this thing explode into the future.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm gonna open it up to the other guys before I chime in. So George or Cedric, if you want to dive in first here.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump off of that. I think similar to Julian, I'm very bullish about the local Bitcoin community and the relationships that are being formed. Specifically, I would say at the meetup level. So I'm a meetup organizer, as I mentioned, here in the Phoenix area. And every time we show up, and we do this every other Tuesday, just outside of Phoenix, and the momentum and the energy and the number of people that show up continues to grow regardless of price right now. That makes, to me, that's like the highest signal, right? We talk a lot about signal versus noise, and really there is no higher signal than meeting other Bitcoiners in real life. Mm-hmm. And it's building relationships, it's getting to know other Bitcoiners, and really it's living into this narrative and this prophecy, if I could use that word, this prediction of where the world is headed, and recognizing that if things are going to sort of go the way of hyper Bitcoinization / hyperinflation, which are sort of two sides of the same coin in some ways right now, you're going to need to know some people in your neighborhood. You're going to need to know some people in your city that have resources, that have connections, and that know you, right, before things get as bad as we think they're going to get. And so really, like, stacking sats and hodling and all these things that Bitcoiners talk about are critical, and they're very important, and self-custody and all that kind of stuff. But to me, like, getting to know your local Bitcoiner and getting to know people around you and forming these essential bonds is kind of underrated in some ways. But you know, the meetup scene is growing in terms of people acknowledging it as an important aspect to the entire ecosystem. And so the more I lean into this and get to know people here in Arizona, and get to know actually through my work at Bitcoin Magazine, other Bitcoin meetup organizers around the country and around the world, the more I'm like, this is the highest signal thing we can be doing, because it encapsulates everything, right? You got all the developers there, you got all the people who are really truly building, and this isn't like a knock on online communities or Twitter, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never met somebody in real life who I know on Twitter who I'm like, you know what, I kind of prefer you on Twitter. It's actually always the opposite. I always 100% of the time prefer to meet people in real life. Even me personally, like, this is a great forum. I appreciate you having me on. I love sharing my ideas, but I would love to hang out in person. It's a different dynamic, right? And the more removed we are from in real life relationships, the more sort of inauthentic it becomes, the more kind of we have to translate and kind of mitigate these interactions. Whereas if you're sitting in the same room with somebody and you're having a conversation, like, everything changes fundamentally. And I think that's a very human aspect to what's happening. So I guess to summarize, what I'm most bullish about is Bitcoiners in real life. And that's why I love meetups. That's why I'm excited about the conference that we're having in Miami in less than 60 days. You know, I think we have to keep thinking about how we take physical ground in a lot of ways. Like, we have a lot of digital ground, especially on Twitter, but how do we as Bitcoiners take physical ground? How do we actually inhabit the real world, you know, in a way that we can actually push back against all of these narratives and the status quo and all of this stuff that seems to be encroaching on our rights. But when you get together with a bunch of Bitcoiners, you start seeing, like, oh, we actually, there's a lot of us here, you know. And it's kind of this dynamic of, like, you can tell somebody, you can talk about Bitcoin all day long. You can talk about 21 million. You can talk about all the things that make it amazing. But when you show people, like, hey, I'm not actually crazy. Like, look at all these other people here. There's people writing books. There's people getting together. Like, there's thousands of us that are going to descend on Miami Beach. Tens of thousands of us and that's actually making a statement, and people are paying attention, not just like regular ordinary people, but like regulators are paying attention, and governments are paying attention. And so the more we can kind of lean into embodying and being sort of Bitcoiners in the flesh, I think the more we can get excited about kind of where this is going.
Absolutely. Cedric, do you want to tag in here as well? Oh, you're muted.
Sure. I do think Bitcoin education is way further along than it was like in 2015 or 2017 or even 2019. I think that's just really something that helps newcomers come along. I'm astounded by when I go meet people in person at Bitcoin meetups. What I've seen over the evolution is I think in the beginning, I saw in myself and just others, a lot of people kind of coming and feeling each other out and feeling like, are we the freaks? Are we the weirdos? Do we know what's going on? And over time, it's now like I feel like everyone's a lot more confident. And I'm not talking about introverted or extroverted, but just in their ideas. And I feel like when I'm at conferences or meetups, people like kind of see and understand themselves now as leaders with a solution rather than fumbling around a problem and they're not sure if they're just the weirdos who think something's wrong. There's a lot more just, I think, resolution or just confidence in these ideas. And I love meeting Bitcoiners in person. I think it's really, so the other side of that coin, I think about like hip hop as a culture and its evolution. And I think Bitcoin kind of is a similar thing where people are coming together as a community and expressing themselves in very different ways. One of that you see is like someone attacked the Bitcoin community. And I don't think there's actually a community, but the space. And we liked his art and we absorbed the art and we took it in and we kind of recognized good art. And I think that within the Bitcoin community is where you're going to find like the best culture, the best music, the best art, the best clothing. I don't mean that's going to be like Bitcoin clothing with Bitcoin emblems, but it just seems that's where the best is going and what's being pulled into this space. And the way that I would kind of look to the hip hop space when it was in its golden era for those kind of signals and cues, I think it's very interesting about the Bitcoin space, where it's just kind of culturally, I don't think we're there yet, but I think we'll reach a zenith or a zeitgeist in the culture for probably America.
Yeah.
That's a low time preference clothing line. I like it.
I think there's going to be a low time preference everything, right? Like what you're getting is right now, the common question is how can I do something in Bitcoin? But I think later the question will be, how can I do something that appeals to Bitcoiners, aka people with low time preference? It doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters that one, you're doing it well, and two, that it appeals to people with low time preference. And that takes kind of a unique mindset for the person to say, I would like this item that is much more expensive than the other items, but I've done the math and I've figured out that I'll never have to buy this again. I'm going to buy the handcrafted kitchen table with a, like made of solid oak that will be in my family for generations rather than the piece of shit IKEA one, right? Like that's the mindset of Bitcoiners. And that's the type of craftsmanship and the type of product that Bitcoiners are going to bring to the table down the line. And again, to your earlier point about, it shows itself in the quality of information dissemination that we're seeing, like speaking to the new class of Bitcoiners that we're getting each cycle and their learning trajectory. It's because Bitcoiners are honing their craft of disseminating information, right? We'll see that in the creation of various products and companies and so on and so forth in the future. But right now it's about the information primarily. And so that's why we're seeing podcasts, books, videos, YouTube channels, all of these different things. Cause it's like, okay, we need to get this mindset and what's trying to be accomplished out to as many people as possible so that we can begin building these communities all together. And to George's point, meeting people locally and creating these circular economies and meeting, I went and picked up eggs today from a dude out the west side of my city. I went over, he's got 20 chickens. I picked up my local eggs and I paid in Bitcoin. And you know, and it was amazing. And I do it. I do it because one, I'm recognizing, I'm effectively building relationships, and that's an important thing. There's a person that has gone to the trouble of maintaining living chickens and collecting eggs and doing all that comes along with it. And he's not even like fully down the rabbit hole. He's learning, but he gets the why of Bitcoin, and he's learning the how. And so I onboarded. He's got a Lightning wallet. I go and I pay my money for my eggs. I pick up like 6 dozen eggs and I bring them back to my house. And when I get through them all, I give him a call again and say, hey, you know, let me know when you have more eggs ready. But having those relationships with people and meeting your local Bitcoiners and kind of cultivating the new class of Bitcoiners means that you're going to have more of that peer-to-peer interaction, more of that although we're kind of separated in distance, like, you know, I'm still in the same municipality, but we're separated by distance. I'm no longer going to my local, you know, chain grocery store. I'm driving across the city to a guy I know who owns the chickens that are laying the eggs that I'm having every morning for breakfast. And I'm cultivating that relationship because it's more important to me, because when, you know, I'm not saying that it's going to be Mad Max tomorrow, but I like the idea of being self-sufficient and local. And so when you get in an instance, perhaps where it's a little harder to get certain things, because, you know, the cracks in supply chains, which is not that far out there, show themselves. You have somebody where you've established a relationship, you've taken the time to know the person, to relate to the person, to teach them and build a community around that. You become self-sufficient. You don't have to specialize in everything. You just gotta meet people. You gotta provide value for them and do it reciprocally. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I love what you're talking about, because it kind of points to the whole thing of when you become a Bitcoiner and you start realizing what's happening, it affects every part of your life, right? So like peer-to-peer egg transactions become a part of your reality, where you're thinking about the world differently. You know, when you go to the grocery store and you buy a thing of eggs, you're asking more questions than you did previously. You know, like how many intermediaries are there between me and this egg purchase suddenly is a part of your, the way your framework, the way that you're making decisions. And certainly there's the supply chain breakdown, the things that have kind of forced us to make these decisions. But I think it's kind of colored all of our decision-making frameworks. So like, how do we get closer to the source? And that's why like local community becomes really important. So similar to you, like we have somebody at our meetup who's like, I got eggs and I'm going to sell them here for sats. And you know, peer-to-peer transactions become so much more exciting when what we're talking about is actually trading value for value, and trading your value for something that you otherwise would have purchased, you know, at the grocery store, and now you're buying direct from the source. It really starts to touch every part of your life. And I'm excited to see more and more of this, because I think we need it. You know, I think we're getting further and further removed from the things that we need to be closer to. So,
yeah, I just typed a comment into the chat here, but like ultimately, right, if you hold Bitcoin long enough, as we know, right, it will appreciate against everything as long as it continues to exist and produce blocks. It gives you your time back. So the time that, you know, our parents' generation used to have to be able to go to, before we got on fiat, right, in 1971, that they had to have an egg guy, to have a meat guy, to have, you know, a cobbler to repair their shoes.
That's what I need. I need a cobbler. If you're in Calgary and you're a cobbler, reach out.
Yeah. When was the last time you got a pair of shoes repaired because they were of such quality versus?
You know, I will tell you, last time it was in Vietnam, and it was against my wife's will. We were
Thanks for
walking
your
down
service.
the street. Yeah, we were walking down the street, and some dude literally snatched the shoe off her foot and had a second sole already glued to it before she could protest, so that she was forced to then pay for the second sole. But I digress. Continue with your point.
Wait. No, wait. We can't just move on from that. Is that a real story? Did that
That's a
actually
real
happen?
story. We were in Hanoi. Yeah, in Hanoi. And we're walking down the street, and there's all these street vendors and everything. But they're, if you're in the cities, they're a little bit more pushy. And she's walking down the street, and this guy comes up, and he's again, like, language barrier and everything. But he like points to her shoe, and he's trying to get her, and she's kind of like, what? And he goes down, and he's not seeming like threatening or anything, but he like pulls it off, and then he goes over to his station, and he starts like doing his thing, and like, rubbing it down, and then he gets this new sole, and she's like, wait, no, and before we knew it, it was already resold entirely and like fully done. And then he was like, oh, it's this much, and she's like, which it wasn't that much because we're in Vietnam, but she was like, I guess, yeah. I would like the second one now. Thank you. But yeah, that's how
they're uneven. Oh, that's amazing. That's a great business model.
Yeah.
I love the hustle.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it gives you your time back and allows humans to be what they are, which is social beings, and it allows you to build those relationships and everything that's so important there, as opposed to having every minute basically, or 50% of your time extracted towards, taxes and this and that. And you basically just having to find out ways to become more efficient out of necessity, which inevitably people cut out those type of relationships because, hey, if I can just have Amazon deliver this whole order to my house, by the time I get home from work, I should be able to just grab those eggs and throw it on the stove to make my stir fry for the evening,
Yeah. It's that low time preference of how soon can I get it? I will dismiss any consideration of quality if I can get it fast. And that's kind of like the story of all our lives. Right.
Yeah.
That's what we've been growing up.
Think about the people in the Amazon warehouse probably pissing and shitting in their pants, like, so you can get your stuff in 2 days. I mean, think about the board of directors meeting, and they're like, we got this problem, Bill. They're peeing in their pants again. Well, we could go to 3-day shipment. Well, customers won't be happy. I mean, it's.
Can we ship the employees? Depends. There we go.
And does that cost less than the other side, which is the customers moving to Walmart if we go to 3-day shipping?
Yeah, yeah. Again, low time preference proliferates everywhere. I'm super excited to have this mindset proliferate so that we can, because that's what we're getting. We're getting these microcosms of low time preference communities, and it's just kind of. It was in the early days, it was so distributed, and the pockets were so small that it was hard to act upon. But that's changing, because I can go to my local meetup and say, hey, I do this for Bitcoin. I'm looking for this in exchange for Bitcoin. Who does this? And you're starting to see people come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I'm the egg guy. I'm the beef guy. I'm the barber, I'm the whatever. And it's happening in real time, and you're building a little bit more dispersed than you might do just in a small local community. But the mindset is there. And so that it's exciting to see that. And so, Julian, I'm really glad you brought up this topic. I think, again, each subsequent new class of Bitcoiners is leveling up quicker and is obtaining a higher level of Bitcoiner than the prior. it's a fantastic thing to see. And I see it every day, and people booking sessions with me talking, you know, oh, I want to learn about this. How long have you been in Bitcoin for? Like a year. You're asking about multisig and derivation paths. Holy Jesus. I didn't even know what that was until like 3.5 years in. So, you know, people are leveling up quick. It's awesome to see. There's going to be more of it. So with that, we're going to do a rotation. I'm going to, again, give a hats off to David. He had a hell of a comment here. Where was it? I fear I've lost it. No, here it is. There we go. Thank you. Oh, it's such a good comment and so valuable to all of us. I have never had any problem with my bank before, so I'm not sure why people always complain about banking. Thank you, David. I never realized that. I never looked at it from that perspective. Maybe this whole Bitcoin thing is a sham. So I appreciate that. But nonetheless, we're going to rotate here. I'm going to toss it down to Cedric, and I'm going to cue you up with a simple question. Why are you bullish?
I'm always bullish. This week, I mean, it's the banking crisis. Was it 5 banks in 10 days? I'm so bullish, I'm worried. It's astounding what we're going through. It echoes 2008, and it's not exactly the same thing, but it does rhyme, and maybe a little March 2020. I mean, stock valuations are all-time highs. Inflation, interest rates keep going up. There's all second and third order effects of that. But what I do see is people talking about bailing out the banks and should we or shouldn't we, and who wins and who loses from that. And again, I think this all just screams Bitcoin. I mean, if people aren't thinking Bitcoin at this point, I don't know what they're missing. But this banking crisis, I think, you know, with the banks in disarray, and I'm not sure if that's being done on purpose to shut down regional banks and centralized into 4 national banks, and to get CBDCs out this summer. But yeah, it's got me really bullish, especially with Bitcoin sitting here at $27,000, just perched.
I feel like I need a refresher in what's even going on, because there were, I don't know if I'm fully up to date on even what's going on with the banks. Like, so what did I hear about? That there was Silvergate, there was SVB, and there was, what was the other one? Signature, right? And then what?
Credit Suisse.
Okay, so I feel like I'm because it's just all meshed together of like the banks are fucked. And so like maybe I've missed more.
Silvergate, UBS, right?
Jesus,
like,
yeah.
I feel like I have an inside line. My cousin-in-law, he sells bonds, and it's like all his biggest clients are blowing up. And I'm looking. His next biggest client is Charles Schwab, and their credit default swaps are exploding as we speak. They're the 10th largest bank. They came out this week and they're like, "Hey, we're okay. We could cover all withdrawals." Now, if that's true, the 9th and the 11th largest banks, like, what the fuck, dude? Why'd you just say that? Like, well, how come we're not saying that? And it's probably not true, just even on paper. But why would you say? You don't need to say it if it's true. You don't need to come to the megaphone. And so it's scary. The banks are teetering. And I'm not saying that this is not by design. I don't know what's going on behind the curtain, but we're having major banking issues right now.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about all the stuff going on with the banking is it's a large part of the whole premise of why Bitcoin came about and what Bitcoiners have been calling out for years, saying none of this is real. Like everything that our society is based upon, everything it's teetering on the edge of is a fallacy, is a mirage. It's that, again, that clip from the beginning of Wolf of Wall Street with McConaughey, where he's the whole, like, it's nothing. It's imaginary. And still we get the calls of, oh, nothing backs Bitcoin. Bitch, nothing backs anything. What are you talking about? Like, it's when people say money is a shared illusion. Yeah, except for our illusion is a defined set of rules. You must buy into that defined set of rules and then opt into it yourself. Whereas the illusion of fiat is, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Is there a virus? Great. Let's print like 4 trillion of those bitches like tomorrow. We're gonna print 40% of the existing monetary base in a single calendar year. You good with that? Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're doing it anyways. Like it's everything is fake. Oh, also those trillions that we just printed. Yeah, you can leverage the shit out of those. You don't need, like, we're just going to go ahead right now and say 0 reserve requirements temporarily. No, we're not going to revoke that. Like this is the system that everything's built on. And everybody says Bitcoin's not backed by anything. It is 100% backed by a set of rules and the laws of physics.
And then the Fed today is going to reject Custodia's application to be a bank at 108% reserve, which is absolutely wild. And you have to think, like, the reason that they're doing that is obviously, like, if anybody has a choice between a bank that is 0% reserved or a bank that is 108% reserved, they're going to move their money to the bank that is 108% reserved, even if they have to pay 25, like 0.25% on their holdings in that bank, if they know that they're actually holding those dollars. But the problem is, who's going to buy the debt if the banks can't buy, can't leverage their position and buy debt and try to get some sort of return. Yeah. And it's just like, so they're rejecting they're rejecting the solution because it will basically expose, it's going to expose basically the Ponzi that it's all built on.
Yeah. You can't introduce an actual safe saving mechanism in a system that is 100% like leveraged place, right? Like when you are forced to gamble with your deposits, when you have a system, again, and I've seen Caitlin Long make this comparison where she says, it's like if you had the valet, if you went to leave your car with a valet or like in a parking garage, and the condition of leaving your car in the parking garage was the people running the parking garage got to then take your car, rent it to an Uber driver, and you were on the hook for if they crashed the fucker, right? Like that, this is the situation. And then if that was the entire parking garage industry, was you parked and then anybody could drive it off the lot and make money off of it. And if they crashed it, it was you were on the hook. And then all of a sudden you had a parking garage company pop up where they're like, yeah, we're just going to leave your car here and we're just going to charge.
But right now it's, you get to leave your car in the garage. Mm-hmm. They give it out to Uber. And if it gets smacked up, you get an Acura.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a pretty good deal. You get fair market value.
Yeah.
You don't get fair market value. You get some sort of par or market value that they deem, which could, so you're made whole. Your liability is nil.
Yeah.
In this Uber. So it's like, I'm going to bring my 2008 Corolla to the garage, and if it gets smacked around, I'm walking away with a 2015, 4Runner. Yeah. So I want to bring my car to the garage.
And then I guess it gets subsidized by like just general.
Yeah, no one's paying attention to how it's getting subsidized. Somewhere else someone's paying, but
it's magic money.
Yeah.
It's it's hilarious. Yeah, it is super funny. I don't know. It's insane. You're right, Julian, in that they couldn't possibly let Custodia Bank exist, because the problem that we're experiencing now of the bank runs would only be exacerbated. Everybody would run to the full custody bank.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
custodial. It's like your cash is here, bank.
Yeah.
Your cash
Exactly.
will stay here. Bank would be a great name. It would. But I don't know. I mean, right now you'd have to get rid of the FDIC insurance program for that to work, which I think we should get rid of it. I think it causes all the malincentives.
It's so the shitty thing about where we are right now is that everything has been become so convoluted that nobody could possibly make the leap to understand the implications down the line, right? Like nobody could possibly, like, you think, oh well, I want some sort of guarantee that my money's going to be there if I deposit in the bank. And then, well, all these companies, if they had gone under, then everybody's going to lose their job. They're going to lose all their money. They're not going to be able to make payroll. We gotta make sure that they're okay. You're like, well, yeah, but what's the consequence there? It incentivizes that behavior further. And you are actually paying for it, as is society as a whole. You go to the grocery store and shit's more expensive and you can't make ends meet. That's why. That's actually why. In a world where that kind of thing did not exist, you would go to the grocery store every, from one year to another. You'd be like, wow, I can actually afford a little bit more. I can actually, but last year we were eating ground beef and now we can get steak once in a while. All of a sudden, I was living in a condo and I saved for a few years, and all of a sudden we're moving on up to a full house and I'm not house poor. Like that would be the trajectory. Whereas we're going the opposite direction, and nobody understands why, and they don't know how to hone in on the reason. I think it's a misconception of what money actually is. I think it's people think money is where the value is derived from. They don't realize it's just a measuring stick. And so they get this idea that if you're a billionaire, you must have stolen it from people. There's definitely people that have gamed the system to get where they are, but for an entirely different reason. The value is created because people have done work to create more stuff. You print more dollars, it doesn't matter. Like if the economy was the four of us and we each created stuff, if we printed a shit ton more money and gave it to everybody in this call right now, it does nothing for us. Somebody has to make more shit for that money to even matter. And so people need to first grasp that concept, and then they need to realize that if you can create money at will, it then just matters who gets the money first, because then their percentage of all the stuff goes up and your percentage goes down. If your bank account balance was a percentage of all money, of all goods, I should say, if your bank account balance was a percentage of all existing goods and services on the planet, you would watch that account balance every single day, and it would be dropping. And people would begin asking questions a lot quicker and understanding a lot quicker.
That's a great idea for Custodia. They should take that on. Just like your percentage of the entire world's GDP and everything else included.
100%. Somebody needs to create a ticker like that. And you even just like a website where you could log in and you could just put in your net worth in US dollars or whatever your local currency is, and just say, okay, here's my net worth in dollars. And then just sit it there and then watch as your percentage of wealth just evaporates and gets siphoned to those closest to the money printer. That would be eye-opening. Somebody watching this right now, please do that. I would love it. So gentlemen, I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm gonna wrap this topic, unless anybody has an additional talking point they want to throw in and around the clusterfuck of banking that we're seeing right now. But if not, then we're gonna do a final rotation. George, you may have preemptively got a little bullish and dove into another topic you're going to cover here, but we've in the background chat, George was so gung ho. It's like, let's do it again. I'm ready.
Round two.
I can do it again. Come on. Yeah,
I mean,
so-
obviously, besides the local community piece, which is something I'm very bullish about, I think the main thing that I want to present is that people are tired right now. Like normal people are just exhausted and they're fed up with the bullshit, and they're waking up in ways that me as like a skeptic and a cynic in a lot of ways that I kind of like don't want to admit. Like COVID, I think has made me a little bit more cynical than most people. I think a lot of things changing during COVID, and I think people are just generally different. The world is different, and it's something that we don't necessarily talk about that much, but it's just true. You know, post COVID is just like a completely different reality, and you know, the more the powers that be push back on us and hold us down, the more questions people are asking, and it's fascinating to watch how exhausted people are with the bullshit. And so I think this time is different, and I'm not somebody who would typically say that, you know, like this time is different. Like we've heard that before. This time does feel different. I think people are looking at these bank collapses. They're seeing it happen in real time. They recognize that they have access to information at a more rapid pace than previous generations, and they can withdraw their money faster from the banks. Like, so bank runs are even different. And I think that is something to pay attention to. And as Bitcoiners, we have a responsibility to be ready, I think, in a lot of ways, for this influx of new people asking questions that are, you know, David Wong level questions. And then you got sort of like the more, how do I do this without like insulting David Wong? You know, more challenging questions to kind of what's happening. No disrespect, David Wong. Appreciate you. Hope you come back next week. I just learned about you today, but I appreciate your voice. I just think that at the end of the day, what makes me bullish is seeing people show up to my Bitcoin meetup, seeing people come through, you know, buying tickets for the Bitcoin conference from companies who have nothing to do with Bitcoin, but are either adjacent to Bitcoin, right? Like Shell, for instance. Shell is a sponsor of the Bitcoin conference. That makes me bullish. That means there are these ancillary conversations happening outside of our little bubble, outside of our little echo chamber, that point to people who are fed up with the bullshit, right? And if that doesn't make us bullish, honestly, I don't know what will. You know, it's time for us to take a stand in a way that we haven't before. And what that looks like is not being afraid, first of all, number one. You know, I think Bitcoiners have this kind of persona of the person who has gone through a lot of hardships in the world and experienced a lot of backlash with the system, and we're kind of fed up, and we've been called conspiracy theorists and whatever else. And the reality is we're not doing anything wrong. You know, we're not doing anything illegal. We're not doing anything immoral. And we get painted with this brush of, you know, we're criminals and, you know, only drug dealers use Bitcoin or whatever. And really what we need is this confidence that says, I am here and I'm not going anywhere. And this is the new world order. This is the great reset. What we're doing actually is in reality going to take over. You know, you can have all your plans and you can have your Klaus Schwab and you can have your WF, but you know, at the end of the day, we know, like, it's kind of like what you're talking about, Ben, is like, if the economy was just the five of us or whatever, you can't just print more money and expect there to be more value. Like, now, you know, play that out on a global scale. And that's actually what we're talking about. If you're not actually producing value, if you're not creating things that people want, then, you know, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. And because we have the level of confidence that says, no, like we're actually creating stuff that people want, that we got to keep leaning into that and not be worried about the FUD and not be worried about Greenpeace or whatever else. We got to keep flipping the tables over. We got to keep leaning into the confidence and know that everything that we're doing matters now more than ever. And now is the time to strike and not be afraid, because we got to keep taking ground. We got to keep living into these narratives that are bold and they're big and they're new. They don't really fit into the traditional narratives. But they matter. And so I don't know if all that makes sense. I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I feel like the matrix is starting to crack and we're starting to kind of come through. And so we just gotta lean in right now more than ever.
I think that everything you just described remind me of an old Andreas talk, the Bitcoin is punk rock narrative, where he talks about how like it's this counterculture movement, and that's okay, because like everybody, it's meant to be that, and it eventually people gravitate towards it, and they'll understand it, and they'll be okay with it. But it's meant to evoke that kind of, whoa, that's different, and because it is, right, it's this juxtaposition of a radically different way of doing things, and not, I don't know fully how to describe it, but like obviously introducing something that is the opposite of what we do right now is going to raise eyebrows. And a lot of people are going to want to defend the system we're currently in. Oddly enough, you're going to get that Stockholm syndrome of, even though many people are being hurt by the current system, they're not sure where to, I guess, point their anger, but they don't want to leave the system either. They think that they can just get their guy in office. They think that, a switching of their political, their local politician will do the trick, when no, it's just all politicians are part of the current system. There are politicians that recognize there's value in Bitcoin. But the system itself as a whole needs a change in order for everybody to begin to reap the benefits, and not just a few people reap the benefits, and no like gradual change of, well, just this person gets in office and things will get better. No, it's kicking the can down the road in different ways. It's which street are you kicking the can down? Whereas, Bitcoin's just going to an entirely different state is effectively what you're doing. You're saying, nah, this one doesn't work for me. I'm out. I'm over here. Much better here. Don't even bother kicking that thing down the road. Just leave the road, leave the street, leave the city, leave the state, come over here. And that's what we're doing. Yeah. So I'll open it up. I don't know if Julian or Cedric want to tag in here.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So I had Marcel and Suli, two Lebanese Bitcoiners, come on the show a couple weeks back, and regarding your point, George, I think that, even though we're dealing with all this bullshit and everybody feels the stress, they don't really know necessarily where it comes from. One thing I actually told my stepmom the other day is that credit masks the pain, right? Like credit and the money printing and all this stuff throws like a veil over the actual pain that we should be feeling. And part of me thinks that, Americans or the Western world really is pretty far, because we look at Lebanon, where their currency is devalued by 99%. And those people still think that the government is going to get them out of it. And they're still having the same objections when these Lebanese Bitcoiners talk to these people about, well, the government will never let it happen. It doesn't have any real value, this, and that. And in the meantime, they're clamoring for the US dollar, right? And the US dollar, just like Bitcoin in Nigeria, is coming at a premium to them. And so I think, and my hope, or what makes me bullish, is, again, these resources that we have to basically arm everybody with. And sometimes we're annoying as Bitcoiners, right? Like, my wife doesn't want to hear me talk about this stuff all the time. My coworkers, I work at an elevator company, they don't want to hear me talk about it. I can basically take any topic you could possibly think of and pull it back to Bitcoin in some way, right? But they don't, people aren't really interested. because they're not feeling pain. But those people in Nigeria have felt pain for so many years. They've had their value extracted from them for year after year after year, that they are just looking for the answer that doesn't involve some form of slavery to another government or to another person, right? And they found it in Bitcoin, and they're willing to pay 60% above what that currency is going for to get into it. And so, like, what I hope is that, you know, we can use these resources and be, you know, leaders and vocal in what we do enough to help our country and to help our politicians and everybody bridge that gap before that pain really becomes a reality, right?
Yeah, it's again to your point in and around of people in Lebanon and other places where they're experiencing insane amounts of inflation, and it's still like, oh, we want the US dollar, which, yes, in relation to their local currency, obviously much better, world reserve currency, stability to a degree, but like still has it's the same problems, just on a different path, or not even a different path, a different point in the path, right? It's the exact same path. Everything is going to zero. Everything is being printed in an infinite amount. It's just how quickly and how many people will migrate to which currency first. And the US dollar has the advantage and the exorbitant privilege of being the last currency everyone will go to until they all leave that too. And so, you know, their idea is right, is we need to go to the hardest money. They just haven't figured out which one is the hardest. So they'll get there. But yeah, like it's confusion and it's difficult to decipher, but I look forward to the day where it's not that's common knowledge, where you go, well, of course I want the currency that has the least chance of ever being debased. That is where I will store my wealth for the long term. Everything else is speculation. If I want to invest in a company, whatever, that's a speculation on my behalf. But if I want to save, if I want a gradual deflationary currency in which, yeah, I'll have higher purchasing power in the future, I can just save and go for retirement and I'm okay, then I'll store it in Bitcoin. If I want to speculate a bit and I know somebody starting a company, or I see a company I think is promising, perhaps I'll invest in it. But I know that is speculation, and that we have the opposite of that today. We have, well, I can't possibly hold on to my money. That's not going to get me through. Obviously, if I just save dollars, I can't possibly make it through retirement. That's a given. Like, everybody already kind of understands, but they haven't made that additional step. Everybody already knows you can't just save dollars and have any hope in hell of making it to retirement. We just need to get them we need to usher them just a little bit further down that path to get it. I think that's where we're at right now. So I don't know. Gentlemen, I think this is a good time to maybe start rounding things up. What I want to do at the end, that I always do, is we'll just get a quick round of final thoughts. Anything that you'd like to get off your chest, or anything like just your summaries of the thoughts of kind of the topics discussed tonight. Also, I'll challenge you, if you see fit, throw in a recommendation as well. So a recommendation could be anything. It could be a piece of content that you've seen recently that you think is valuable, or maybe a book that you read somewhere along the way, a video, whatever it may be. Or it could be like an application or a device or something you think is valuable, or just a life lesson that you've come across that you think would be valuable for people, a piece of advice, anything, some sort of a recommendation that you'd like to bestow upon people that you think could be valuable to the people watching. I think, again, my main takeaway from the chat today is just, it's one of optimism. Everything that we're seeing, despite everything being thrown at us, we're all just kind of taking it in stride. The Bitcoin community is great at looking at the absurd FUD thrown at us and saying, yeah, we're gonna, that's our badge of honor. We're gonna wear that. You created a magnificent piece of art to point out how toxic Bitcoin is to everybody. And we're going to look at that as a symbol of hope for the future. Like that encapsulates Bitcoin perfectly, because that's how the world views it. Everybody looks at that thing. And this was, again, a fantastic artist's rendition of how awful Bitcoin is. And Bitcoiners looked at it and said, that's beautiful, because it is. It actually is. And I think all that it takes is a shift of mindset for the rest of the world to realize the thing they're looking at, thinking it will destroy the planet and is poison. It just takes a change of your mindset and a little bit more understanding to realize the beauty within. And so I'm excited to see that happen over the years. In terms of recommendations, I would like to toss out there. There was a few books that were kind of on the radar recently, but anyways, I just did a kind of quick run through it again. It was my second time looking at it, but the Fiat Standard, Saifedean. If you've read the Bitcoin Standard, I'm sure most people watching this have read the Bitcoin Standard, or a lot of them anyways. But if you haven't read the follow-up, Fiat Standard is great. In particular, the stuff in and around food and how screwed up the food industry is due to the fiat system. Those chapters are particularly enlightening. And also, I'll tag on there, there's a guy by the name of Calley Means, CALLEYMEANS, if I'm not mistaken. He was actually on the Bitcoin Standard podcast, but he's also been he's been making the rounds. Anyways, he was part of government in the US. I can't remember his title, but he had to do with a lot of the food industry and the messaging in and around food and health and all that kind of stuff. And the stories that he can tell in terms of what goes on behind the scenes and how huge companies like Coca-Cola and Kellogg's basically are so entrenched and are able to influence the government guidance on what you eat and what is healthy for you and what you consume, even to the point of kind of making the science around it almost useless. Then what I mean by that is like Coca-Cola spending 10 times the amount of money as the rest of the industry on research as to what is healthy for you. And the reason for that is so that they can kind of dilute all of the studies, so that whenever there's a study that says sugary soda is awful for you, there's 10 other studies that say, actually, it's probably not that bad. In fact, it might even be good for you in moderation. And the reason they can get away with, or given that they can get away with that, they can get things like, well, the food stamp program in the US, you can only get certain things. And if they're included in that, that's one of their biggest sources of revenue. And guess what? They're included in that because they're deemed healthy. So very interesting. Check out Calley Means, but read the Fiat Standard and check out that podcast on the Bitcoin Standard podcast with Calley Means and Saifedean. Yeah, and J Pleb in the comments says paid fiat science. Yes, indeed. That's a lot of what we're getting. There's not a lot of critical thinkers out there. I don't know if you guys saw did you guys ever see the breakdown of recommended foods that recently came out from like a major institution, and Lucky Charms was placed like multiple spots above ground beef?
Yes, that was ridiculous.
It's like at what point you have to believe anybody who sees that goes, oh shit, everything I know is wrong.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Lucky Charms doesn't fart, bro.
Yeah. It's insane to me that's, but like, this is how ridiculous, this is how far down that again path of fiat mentality we are. But nonetheless, check that out. Those are my recommendations. Sorry, a bit of a long rant for my final thoughts, but Julian, I'm going to toss it to you. Final thoughts, recommendations, take it away.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to your comments about being able to save in Bitcoin for retirement as opposed to having to speculate, it just reminds me of a conversation I had with a gentleman that I went to grad school with that I haven't talked to in years. He sees some of my posts and he started commenting and sent me an email. And even though we went to grad school, he ended up being a plumber. And what he told me is that he buys Bitcoin now because he knows that if he fixes a toilet and gets paid for it in Bitcoin today, that when he's old and retired and can't get on his knees to fix that toilet, he's able to use that same exact amount of money to get that or more. And that was kind of a powerful thing. And so I just wanted to bring that up. But as far as resources or things to look at, my big thing, and a part of the reason I started my channel, is that I always just want to, I want to keep it simple. Sometimes I get away from it a little bit too much, but I want to have content that is something that anybody could watch that's kind of new to Bitcoin or kind of interested. And I think Peter McCormick from What Bitcoin Did just did a really, really nice 3-part series of like, what is Bitcoin? How do I use it? What's the purpose of it? It's just a three-point series, like 20 some minutes per episode. And it's like question and answer, quick hitting, straight to the facts, no BS, no, we're not going down rabbit holes. We're not doing all this stuff that makes Bitcoin so complicated. And I think he did a really good job encapsulating that. And I think as more people are questioning, are reaching out to the people in the chat and other places, that might be a good place to kind of direct them for a first place to start before the Bitcoin standard or something like that.
Awesome. I love that. Again, so many Bitcoiners get so enamored with, oh, we're gonna discuss this, and then we're gonna go down this rabbit hole, and it's you lose people. And so when you have those quick answers like, where do I start? Okay, you got to figure out where you get Bitcoin. What's next? All right, you got to get a Bitcoin wallet and withdraw. Okay, what's next? Like that quick. Okay, great. I have actionable advice in a short period of time. That's fantastic. So yeah, 100%. Cedric, I'm going to toss it to you. Final thoughts, recommendations. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I'll echo the Fiat Standard by Safe. Tremendous book. What a tour de force. Hard to say, but almost might be better than the first one, Bitcoin Standard. Really great book. I've had him on the show to talk about it. A lot of people might not know Coca-Cola actually seeded Monsanto, and I mean literally like funded the beginning of Monsanto to help them look for cheap sources for caffeine. So, they were paying a little too much more for caffeine that you'd probably want to put in your soda. So Monsanto probably came up with some ways to find caffeine that you wouldn't really want to know about. So they offloaded that R&D onto Monsanto and gave them their start. I think Bitcoin was built for this moment we're in now. And I think about, my takeaways from the show is Bitcoin is sort of, Bitcoin adoption is like the internet adoption. You don't adopt the internet, learn how to use it, and then ever go back to analog. You just kind of get on board and you kind of see how it's better, and it's one way. And so Bitcoin adoption only goes up. And I kind of feel like we're in a field of dreams moment. And I don't know if you've seen that movie, but they're building the baseball field. The baseball players are coming, but not everyone can see the baseball players. And in particular, it's the brother-in-law. And he's trying to help them manage the farm, and he thinks they're going to lose the farm. And they're obviously giving up crop revenue to build this baseball field that he can't see the players on. And it's not until his niece falls off the stands and chokes on a hot dog, and one of the players comes off the field to save the little girl, that he notices that there's players on the field. And I think we're in that kind of moment now with the banks. And people are like, wait a minute, the banks don't have the money if we all need it at once. Because everyone understands the insurance program, but it doesn't work if we all need it at once in a fire. So my sort of words of advice or instead of takeaways, giveaways is the Tao of Pooh, I think is a great book. And something I think about a lot is hard decisions, easy life, easy decisions, hard life. So
Awesome. I love that. What was the name of the book? Sorry.
The Tao of Pooh. So Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh, but Taoism and sort of Taoism.
I'll have to
seen
take a
through-
look at that.
It's a great book.
Huh.
So.
All right, I'll check that out. Awesome. All right, George, you're up. Final thoughts, recommendations. Go ahead.
Hey, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Final thoughts. I think that everything that we're seeing right now is the epitome of kind of what we're trying to do, right? So even all the way down to Greenpeace's elaborate plan backfiring, I think we got to lean into these moments and really make the most of them. All the way down to Balaji's tweet. Like the Balaji's bet, I think, is something that is interesting and controversial and something that we need to be leaning into, because it's like, if we don't, as Bitcoiners, like, what are we even talking about? If we don't think that Bitcoin can go to $1 million in 90 days, like, it might not be these 90 days, but the broader point is that this is possible. This is happening. The backdrop of hyperinflation is imminent, right? And so I think that we have a responsibility to actually lean into these narratives in a way that we're actively having conversations with people, with normies in our life and all that kind of stuff. But I think the most important thing, if I'm going to go to like a recommendation, and it's something I talked about already, but ultimately for the people who are watching this show, who are probably Bitcoiners already, or Bitcoin adjacent, it really does come down to leaning into, being a Bitcoiner in the real world, right? Actually living into the things that we talk about online. And what that looks like is transacting in Bitcoin, attending your local Bitcoin meetup, looking for opportunities to meet Bitcoiners in real life. I would even say, and I get it, I work for Bitcoin Magazine, we're throwing a conference. To a certain extent, I'm paid to say, like, come to the conference. But even before I worked there, I was an attendee, and I joined the team because I actually believed that the aspect of growing this physical movement where we're taking ground and we're all showing up in force is something that matters, is something that is important. And so whether it's on the global scale where, Bitcoin Miami is the largest gathering of Bitcoiners, and that is making a statement. So every single person that comes and the greater mass that we have, the more impactful the statement is. If it's that's one thing. Or if it's your local Bitcoin meetup where, again, you're taking ground at the local level. I think these are like really practical things that anybody can do, right? You don't have to write code. You don't have to do anything beyond just showing up. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to encourage is people to really get to know people who are in their circles, in their communities, who are Bitcoiners. And again, don't be afraid. Don't try to like comply with laws that don't exist yet. Don't fall into the FUD, all this stuff. And I think that if we all do that, if we can all just kind of take these incremental steps to be Bitcoiners in real life, then maybe that will make a incremental difference and really accelerate hyper Bitcoinization.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Reach out, build your communities, be active. Don't just buy some sats and sit in quiet solitude in your basement. You can do more than that. You can be active. You can meet people. You can build relationships. You can build communities. Gentlemen, I'm going to say thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it. Everybody watching, all of their Twitter handles are down below. You can find them there. Give them all a follow. And then also from their Twitter handles, find out all the stuff that they're doing and follow all of those things as well. There's a whole bunch going on there. So, I have their main Twitter handles and then you can extrapolate out from there. So nonetheless, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I hope to see all of you in person at some point soon in the future, whether it be Miami or whether it be somewhere else. Yeah, you're all welcome back anytime.
Too kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, guys. See you later. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Again, follow all of them. All their Twitter handles are down below. This is a great convo. Really enjoyed it. Of course, like, subscribe, share, all those things help a ton. They get this content in front of more eyeballs. A couple other things, of course, if I could get my screen up here. Holy moly. Okay. George was talking a whole bunch about Miami. Of course, that's coming up super soon. It's like, it's less than 60 days out. What is it? It's the 18th. The 18th. I'm getting confused because my flights are before then. Obviously, I'm getting into town prior. But Miami is a blast. This is my 4th time attending coming up. I'm super excited for it. I'm really, really excited. It's a lot of fun. There's so many Bitcoiners in one place. I don't quite know how to describe Miami. It's almost overwhelming. Like last year was insane. Seeing the size of that thing was unbelievable. There's so much. There's no chance that you can take in everything that's there. So just if you're going, go with the expectation of like, I'm going to take in as much as I can and just like focus your attention on the things that you most value. Now, heads up, if you're getting tickets for it, tickets go up by another $50 tonight at midnight. So if you're thinking of grabbing tickets sooner rather than later is probably a good idea. May 18th through 20th, that's when the conference is. 150 speakers, 15,000 plus attendees, 2,000 companies. There's all kinds of stuff. The trade floor of all the like different companies and stuff that you can go up and get hands on and play with, and artists and all that stuff is massive. That's going to take you plenty of time to see. The speakers are insane. There's so many different stages based on whatever you're interested in, and whether it be open source or mining or like the main stage or like the big speakers. There's a ton there. There's something for everyone. And yeah, again, I'll be there. I'm very excited. I'm speaking in various capacities. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. Again, b.tc/conference. And you can use code before, if you're buying right now, stop, use code BTC sessions. You can get 10% off the tickets. Also, if you're going to be in Miami, by the way, I'm doing a cold card workshop. It's going to be on May 17th. So a day before the conference. 4 hours long. It is a cold card deep dive. If you've not yet booted up your cold card and started to use it, or even if you have and you want to get a little bit deeper of an understanding of it, this thing goes from the basics, setup, basic use, recovery, all that kind of stuff. And then it dives into a ton of the advanced features so that you can walk out of there at the end of the day and be effectively one of the most preeminent cold card experts on the planet. You will know far more than your average cold card user, let alone somebody who hasn't used it yet. Thing is a beast. But nonetheless, you can find tickets for that. Limited tickets left. It is listed on the Bitcoin Miami website, but it's on, if you want a direct link to it, btcsessions.ca. Go over to the right under in-person workshops. You'll find a link there. So btcsessions.ca. That's also where you can find me for one-on-ones if you need a little bit of hand-holding, if the free tutorials online, if you need a little bit of extra help. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap up there. If you want to help the show in another way, you can hit up the previously mentioned sponsors, HodlHodl, CoinKite, Nunchuk, Start9. They're all down below. Or you can drop me a Bitcoin tip at my Strike page, strike.me/BTC sessions. Head there, type in any amount you want. You don't need Strike to use it. You hit the amount, you hit the tip button. You'll see a Lightning invoice, or if you prefer, tap the arrow to the right. You'll see a regular Bitcoin QR code. With that, I am out. Have yourselves a wonderful day or evening, wherever you may be. See you guys next time for your daily session.
We have BTC sessions. Bitcoin is FU money. You can't stop it. Get yourself some Bitcoin and hold it yourself. Peer-to-peer exchange. You know, people are going to organically come to it and gravitate towards it, especially in the world we're living in now. It's incredible. It's a great tool, and I can't wait to see it proliferate everywhere.
HodlHodl the Bitcoin.